Welcome. We're here to really get into the source material, pull out those key insights so you feel totally up to speed.
Ready to go.
Today, we are tackling a really, really unusual source. It's written by someone with, well, a truly unique viewpoint.
Yeah, it's quite something. The author is Mary L. Trump. She's not just the subject's niece, she's also a trained clinical psychologist.
And that's the crucial part, isn't it? This isn't just family dirt or a political hit piece.
Not at all. It's framed as a clinical analysis. Mary Trump has a PhD in clinical psychology. She's taught graduate courses on trauma, psychopathology, developmental psychology too, even worked on an admissions ward at a psychiatric hospital.
So she's bringing that professional training to bear on arguably the most analyzed family on the planet.
Exactly. She's looking at the environment, the dynamics, the key players through that specific lens.
Our goal here then is to really dig into those core insights she offers about the family history, the dynamics, trying to get past the easy labels and understand the why behind it all.
And she sets the stage right away, doesn't she, with that opening quote?
Oh, the Victor Hugo quote. Yeah, remind us.
If the soul is left in darkness, sins will be committed. The guilty one is not he who commits the sin, but the one who causes the darkness.
Wow, okay. That really frames it, doesn't it? And it immediately points the finger not just at the individual's actions, but at the environment, the darkness that allowed it or even created it.
Precisely. It suggests the behaviors described are almost predictable outcomes of a deeply dysfunctional, emotionally barren system. It's about the context creating the conditions for the pathology.
Right. So let's dive into that pathology. Part 1, the psychological profile.
Okay. So journalists, commentators, they often throw around terms like malignant narcissism. Mary Trump, though, she tries to ground it more formally.
Using her clinical background. So what does she say specifically about Donald Trump's behavior based on the clinical criteria?
Well, she states pretty clearly that in her assessment, he meets all 9 criteria listed in the DSM-5. That's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders for Narcissistic Personality Disorder.
All 9. That's
Yes.
significant. It's not just a few traits.
Exactly. It signifies a pervasive pattern. We're talking grandiosity, but also exploitation, a profound lack of empathy, entitlement, needing constant admiration. The whole package, according to her analysis, based on observable behavior.
But she says NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, only takes us so far. She brings up comorbidities. Explain that for us.
Right. Comorbidities just mean having more than one disorder at the same time. They overlap and often make the overall picture, well, more complex and severe.
Okay. So what other conditions does she suggest might be in play?
She argues there's a strong case that he also meets criteria for antisocial personality disorder.
Which is sometimes casually called sociopathy.
Yeah, in its severe form. And the indicators she points to are things like chronic disregard for rules or laws, criminality, intense arrogance, and just a fundamental lack of concern for other people's rights or feelings.
Okay, NPD, potential ASGD. But then she throws in something that seems, well, almost contradictory. Dependent personality disorder. That doesn't fit the strongman image at all.
It seems counterintuitive, right? But this is where her analysis gets really interesting. She argues we have to look past the public persona.
So how does she see dependent personality disorder fitting in? What are the signs?
She points to things like needing excessive reassurance to make decisions, a real discomfort with being alone, and going to extreme lengths to get support or nurturing from others. Basically, an inability to function independently, emotionally speaking.
So the outward aggression, the dominance, hiding an underlying neediness, a dependency.
That's precisely her argument. The bluster is a defense mechanism. The core engine is this deep reliance on external validation and support. He depends on others first, his father, Fred Sr., then the banks, later political allies to prop up his ego, shield him from failure, maintain the illusion.
It's not about needing love, but needing constant affirmation and protection.
Exactly that. Constant shielding from reality.
Now, she's careful to say this isn't a formal diagnosis, right? You can't do that without proper testing, which he never submit to.
Oh, absolutely. She stresses that caveat multiple times. It's an assessment based on observed patterns viewed through her lens, not a substitute for a full evaluation.
But this whole discussion of the NPD, the potential comorbidities, leads her to what seems like the central pillar of her argument about his life, this idea of him being institutionalized.
Yes. This is, I think, the most powerful concept in the book. She argues he spent most of his adult life functionally institutionalized.
Meaning what? Not like in a hospital, but
No. Meaning he's always been inside a system that supports him, protects him, shields him from the normal consequences and negotiations that everyone else has to deal with in the real world. He's never really had to operate independently.
So what's the impact of that? If you always cushioned, always bailed out,
Mm.
what do you fail to develop?
According to Mary Trump, you fail to develop basic things like resilience, empathy, the ability to actually learn from failure or even tolerate it. The institution first frets Sanier's money and influence, protecting him from business risks, even legal trouble.
And then the banks later on.
Right, the banks repeatedly bailing him out despite massive failures. And then eventually, the power structures of politics shielding him. This environment, she argues, guaranteed he wouldn't have to grow or adapt. Failure was always rewarded, or at least had no real negative consequences for him.
Which reinforces the belief that rules just don't apply.
Exactly. It cemented this idea that truth, accountability, consequences,
Mhm.
those are for other people.
And that feeds right back into the title, doesn't it? Too much and never enough. He gets too much undeserved support, which creates this bottomless need that can never actually be satisfied.
Precisely. An unfillable void.
To really grasp this, we have to go back to the beginning, to the architects of that institution, Fred Sr. and Mary Ann McLeod Trump.
Absolutely. Let's start with Fred C. Trump, the patriarch. What kind of man does the book describe?
He's painted as this incredibly driven, but also very provincial real estate guy, focused entirely on Brooklyn and Queens. Hugely successful in that world, but
cautious, not the flamboyant risk-taker Donald later.
very conservative in his business dealings. And the book notes he even lied about his age early on, pretending to be younger to seem more impressive. Suggests an early reliance on, image management, showmanship.
And his language, always exaggerating.
Totally. Everything was great, fantastic, the best. But apparently he wasn't comfortable in the spotlight himself. No public speaking, hated TV interviews. He liked operating behind the scenes.
Which might explain why he maybe favored Donald later, someone who could handle the spotlight.
Perhaps. And his core philosophy. It came from Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking, but in a very specific way.
Yeah, she describes it as a really superficial take, not about faith or morality, but purely transactional.
Exactly. For Fred Sr., it boiled down to money equals self-worth. Financial value was human value, full stop.
And a real scarcity mentality, despite being incredibly wealthy.
Yes, it was all zero-sum. If you give something away, you lose. The more you have, the more you have. Compassion, empathy. Those are weaknesses. And this attitude, she argues, was passed directly to Donald.
Okay, so that's Fred Sr. What about the mother, Mary Ann McLeod?
Her story is quite different. She came from a pretty harsh background in Scotland, the Isle of Lewis, affected by World War I, the Spanish flu. A tough place. She came to America, married Fred, found financial security. But her major impact seems to have been through her absence, especially early on.
An absence triggered by a serious health crisis.
Yes. After her youngest son, Robert, was born, she had severe postpartum complications, needed an emergency hysterectomy. Apparently, he nearly died. And this led to long-term health problems and, crucially, left her physically unwell and emotionally depleted for about 6 critical months.
6 months. And how old were the younger boys then?
Donald was about 2.5, Robert just 9 months old. Prime time for developing secure attachment.
And Fred Sr. wasn't exactly stepping into the breach.
Not at all. He stuck to his 12-hour days, 6 days a week, believed childcare, especially for young kids, was not his job. So you had this huge parenting vacuum.
What was Mary Ann like as a mother when she was present but maybe struggling?
The book describes her as often unstable, needy, prone to playing the martyr. She seemed to use her children for her own comfort rather than providing consistent comfort to them. So the boys, especially Donald and Robert, were left without a reliable emotional anchor, which leads us right into the consequences of that emotional void.
Yeah, this is where the damage really starts to show. That lack of consistent nurturing taught a devastating lesson. Needing anything, comfort, help, even just attention became dangerous. It led to humiliation or rejection.
Because if they showed vulnerability, Fred Sr. would get angry or just ignore them.
Exactly. So especially for Donald and Robert, who were so young during their mother's illness, they learned very quickly to suppress their needs. Learned helplessness almost. Vulnerability gets punished, so you shut it down.
And for Donald, this suppression morphed into something else.
His defenses became, primitive. Hostility, bullying, disrespect. But the key thing Mary Trump emphasizes is that Fred Sr. didn't just tolerate this.
He encouraged.
He actively championed it. He saw the aggression, identified with it, and decided this was the kind of killer he wanted as an heir. In Fred's world, weakness was the ultimate sin. He basically groomed Donald to be ruthless and seemingly invulnerable.
And the primary way Donald learned how to be ruthless was by watching his father interact with his older brother, Freddy.
Oh, absolutely. Freddie was the object lesson. Donald saw Fred Sr. systematically demean and humiliate Freddie, the original heir, the namesake for any sign of sensitivity or for having interests outside the family business.
So Donald figured out, to get Dad's approval, I have to be everything Freddy is not.
Precisely. Be tough. Never apologize. Never admit you're wrong. Never show weakness. That was the only path to Fred Sr.'s conditional acceptance, which passed for love in that family.
Which brings us to the tragedy of Freddie Frederick C. Trump Jr. He was supposed to be the heir, but he just wasn't cut out for Fred Sr.'s world.
He felt the pressure, but his passions were elsewhere: flying planes, boating, water skiing, things Fred Sr. saw as totally frivolous, distractions from making money.
And Fred Sr. let him know it.
Constantly.
Relentlessly. Fred's contempt for anything Freddie cared about just wore him down. It became this constant, debilitating source of stress.
There's that infamous story, the mashed potato incident. Seems trivial, but psychologically important. Hugely important, according to Mary Trump. Freddie was 14, Donald was 7. Donald was apparently tormenting their younger brother, Robert. Freddie, trying to intervene, dumped a bowl of mashed potatoes on Donald's head, and everyone laughed. At Donald. Mary Trump writes, this was maybe the first time Donald felt truly humiliated, especially by someone he considered inferior. It wounded his pride deeply.
The lesson wasn't don't bully Robert.
It was humiliation is a powerful weapon, and I will never let it happen to me again. He learned to dish it out, not take it. Decades later, apparently, someone mentioned it at a White House dinner, and Donald still got visibly angry.
Wow. Okay, so Freddie eventually tries to escape, right? He becomes a pilot.
Yeah, he defied his father, became a professional pilot for TWA, and he made the prestigious Boston-LA route on his first try. A huge achievement for a civilian pilot back then.
This should have been his I made it moment.
But Fred Sr.'s reaction was just brutal. Constant abuse. Calling him a glorified bus driver in the sky. Making it crystal clear that leaving the family business, Trump management, meant he was a failure, a disgrace.
That pressure must have been unbearable.
It was. Combined with a serious drinking problem, which the stress undoubtedly worsened, it led to a rapid downfall. Within only 4 months of reaching that career peak, TWA basically gave him an ultimatum. Resign or be fired.
So he resigned.
He resigned, lost his dream, his independence. Mary Trump describes it as this slow destruction of his spirit. He had nowhere else to go but back to the family, back to working for his father in a job he despised.
And while Freddie's star was falling, Donald's was rising. He gets sent off to military school.
New York Military Academy, at 13. Fred, who usually avoided the younger kids, started visiting Donald at NYMA almost every weekend. The sudden attention, Mary suggests, eased Donald's feelings of abandonment and gave him this connection to his father that Freddie was losing. Fred actually admired Donald's defiance, his disregard for rules. It was like an audition.
An audition he passed. And he even used Freddie's struggles to cement his own place, didn't he? The steeplechase incident.
Yeah, that was cold. Fred Sr. had put Freddie in charge of announcing the controversial demolition of Steeplechase Park at Coney Island. A really high-pressure situation for Freddie.
And Donald saw an opportunity.
He apparently casually mentioned to Fred Sr. how Freddie was distracted, flying his little plane out to Montauk on weekends for his hobbies. Fred Sr.'s reaction was immediate. Get rid of it! The plane was sold the next week. At just 24 years old, Donald is made president of Trump management. Gets way more respect, more perks than Freddie ever did. It wasn't about competence. Fred Sr. needed someone who reflected his own ambitions and ruthlessness.
Which sets the stage for the next chapter. Donald moving into Manhattan, fulfilling Fred Sr.'s own suppressed dream.
Fred Sr. had the money, but maybe not the nerve or the polish for Manhattan. He saw Donald as having the chutzpah, the boldness to make that leap.
And this is where the myth-making machine really kicks into high gear.
Totally. Donald uses Fred's money, huge amounts of it, plus the growing power of television to craft this image. The brilliant, self-made tycoon. It was, from the start, a carefully constructed fiction, heavily bankrolled by his father.
And a key player in building that fiction and getting him press was Roy Cohn.
Oh, Roy Cohn, a truly notorious figure, vicious lawyer, master manipulator. He came into the picture in 1973.
It was during the housing discrimination lawsuit, right?
Exactly. The Justice Department sued Fred and Donald for systematically refusing to rent to black tenants. Cohn's advice wasn't to settle quietly. It was to launch this outrageous $100 million countersuit against the Justice Department itself, purely for headlines. And it worked. It got 27-year-old Donald massive front-page press coverage for the first time. Cohn was exactly the kind of aggressive, win-at-all-costs mentor Donald was primed for. Fred taught him to be tough. Cohn taught him how to use the media and twist the narrative.
Even though they eventually settled the discrimination case, they spun the whole thing as a win because of the attention.
Absolutely. For them, the attention was the win.
So the image gets built. But behind the scenes, the reality was less impressive. Lots of failures.
Massive failures. We're talking 5 corporate bankruptcies. The Taj Mahal casino was a spectacular financial disaster, but the institutionalization continued.
How so? Who was shielding him now?
The banks themselves. They had loaned him so much money, they became invested in propping up his image just to try and recoup their losses. His brand was their only hope. They literally put him on a financial leash.
The infamous allowance.
Yeah, a $450,000 a month personal allowance. Just to maintain the lifestyle, keep the illusion of success alive while they tried to sort out the mess.
Can you imagine getting paid nearly $500,000 a month because you failed so spectacularly? What message does that send?
It sends the message. Failure doesn't matter. Consequences are for little people. It reinforced his core belief that he was special, immune. Mary Trump calls this period the art of survival. Surviving not through skill, but by escaping consequences.
And this constant rescuing, this lack of accountability, it just digs that black hole of need even deeper, right? The need for external validation.
Absolutely. Because deep down, the insecurity is still there. He needs constant praise, constant affirmation, even for trivial things. Asking everyone if his plane is great, if his deal is fantastic. It's all about feeding that fragile ego, because facing the reality of his dependence and failures is presumably terrifying.
We get a real glimpse into this superficiality when Mary Trump herself was hired to ghostwrite one of his books, The Art of the Comeback.
Right. He hired her apparently because she wrote a nice letter for someone once, and he figured she could make other people look really good.
But when she tried to actually interview him for the book,
He wasn't interested. Bored, gossiping, talking about golf. The material he eventually gave her wasn't about business strategy at all. It was just this long, rambling transcript, mostly about women who had slighted him or rejected him. Petty grievances.
like what?
She mentions the highlights were his complaints that Madonna chewed gum unattractively and that the Olympic skater Katarina Witt had big calves.
That's the material for The Art of the Comeback. Complaints about gum and calves.
That's what she reports. It showed his focus wasn't on resilience or strategy because he hadn't really had a comeback, just bailouts, but on these incredibly superficial personal slights and physical appearances.
Which really underscores that anecdote from her visit to Mar-a-Lago while researching.
Oh, yeah. She's there for lunch, wearing a bathing suit under a cover-up. He sees her, and his immediate reaction isn't hello or how's the research. It's
Holy shit, Mary, you're stacked.
exactly a purely physical, objectifying assessment. Not a greeting, not a conversation. She notes, it was the most interesting thing that happened on the whole trip. It just perfectly captures that transactional way of seeing people.
And that lack of humanity seems to reach its absolute peak in the events surrounding Freddy's final years in death.
This is where the story gets incredibly dark. Freddy returns to the family fold, but completely broken, working a menial maintenance job for Trump management, battling severe alcoholism, his health failing enlarged heart, a congenital defect.
And when he finally asks his father for help with the drinking,
Fred Sr.'s response, according to the book, was that chillingly dismissive line, straight out of his positive thinking playbook. Just give it a quarter of a turn on the mental carburetor.
just fix it yourself. Blame the victim. No acknowledgement of the illness or his own role in Freddy's decline.
None whatsoever. Addiction was just a moral failing, a weakness. Fred refused to spend money or emotional energy on proper help. It was another form of abandonment, really.
And then Freddy's actual death at 42.
Yeah.
The details are just staggering.
They really are. When he collapsed, seriously ill, they didn't take him to Jamaica Hospital, the big hospital where the family had donated millions, even had a pavilion named after them. They took him to Queens Hospital Center instead.
Why?
The book suggests indifference, maybe even avoiding embarrassment. And crucially, no one from the family went with him in the ambulance.
No one.
No one. And when the family was told later that day that Freddy was dying, Donald and his sister Elizabeth apparently decided to go to the movies instead of the hospital.
They went to the movies while their brother was dying. That's hard to comprehend. It speaks volumes about the lack of any emotional connection.
It screams transactional relationships, convenience and self-interest above everything, even basic human decency towards their own brother.
And the disregard continued even after his death.
Yeah. Freddie had always wanted to be cremated, ashes scattered in Montauk, a place he loved, associated with his flying and boating. Fred Sr. apparently scoffed at the idea Montauk represented those frivolous things he despised in Freddie.
So they ignored his wishes.
Completely. They put his ashes in a box and buried them.
And then came the financial blow to Freddie's children, Mary and her brother Fritz.
Utterly cut out. Freddie was supposed to get a 20% share of Fred Sr.'s estate. Instead, his kids, Mary and Fritz, got basically nothing a tiny sliver meant for all the grandchildren combined. Less than 0.1% of what their aunts and uncles got.
And Donald had control over even that tiny amount.
Yes. Donald, Robert, and their sister Marianne were the trustees. Donald's signature was needed for every single check. It was absolute control, even over the scraps.
This pattern of control and scarcity, it wasn't just directed at Freddie's kids, was it? Even the successful siblings felt it. Marianne, the federal judge.
Right. Even she, a highly respected judge with good income, felt the chilling effect of Fred Sr.'s philosophy. They were all trained never to ask for anything. Asking meant weakness.
So she resorted to getting laundry money.
It's an incredible detail. She apparently relied on her mother sneaking her Crisco cans filled with coins collected from the washing machines in Fred Sr.'s apartment buildings. This petty cash, Marianne apparently admitted later, helped her survive financially during a tough time. Even a federal judge couldn't ask her father for help.
Only Donald, who constantly failed upwards and took whatever he wanted, was exempt.
He was the exception that proved the rule.
We also see Fred Sr. himself decline with dementia. And ironically, that's when a different side emerged.
Yeah, as the dementia progressed, he became less cruel, more confused, forgetful, hiding checkbooks, asking the same questions over and over. Freddy Trump knows he only became sweet to her, called her nice lady, after he forgot who she actually was in the family hierarchy.
So the kindness only returned when the memory of the toxic family structure faded.
That's the implication. The pathology was learned, enforced, maintained. It wasn't necessarily his core nature, perhaps.
But the family's core nature, the cruelty, snapped right back into focus when Mary and Fritz sued over the will. That's when things got really vicious.
Oh, absolutely. The lawsuit wasn't just about money for them. It was about the principle, the injustice. And the family's retaliation was immediate and brutal.
They cut off their health insurance.
Yes. And this wasn't just inconvenient. It was potentially lethal. Fritz's infant son, William, was critically ill, needed constant nursing care for seizures, and was entirely dependent on that insurance.
Pulling the insurance offered no real benefit to the siblings, did it? It was just punishment.
Pure, gratuitous cruelty, inflicting maximum pain for challenging them. And the callousness went even further.
What else happened?
One of the estate lawyers representing Donald and the others apparently dismissed the baby's critical needs, calling the nurses overpriced babysitters and suggesting Fritz should just learn CPR in case his son stopped breathing. It was this final act, this deliberate, vindictive attack on a sick child, that finally pushed Mary Trump over the edge. Exactly. She decided the world needed to know. She contacted Suzanne Craig, a reporter at the New York Times. Risking serious legal and personal repercussions, she made these covert trips back to her old lawyer's office.
Smuggling out boxes of documents.
Yes. Wills, depositions, crucial bank records, evidence of the tax schemes. Everything she could find.
And those documents formed the basis of that massive Pulitzer Prize-winning expose in the Times.
They painted a picture of decades of systematic tax fraud. There was this shell corporation called All County used to siphon money. And critically, they showed how the family had deliberately, massively undervalued Fred Sr.'s real estate empire to dodge hundreds of millions in inheritance taxes.
The family reaction was denial, I assume.
Of course. Though Marianne, while initially claiming ignorance, just a girl signing papers, later showed a flash of that buried resentment. Yeah. When he apparently taunted her, claiming she owed her judgeship to him a favor Roy Cohn had arranged years before, she supposedly snapped back, "If you say that one more time, I will level you." An empty threat, maybe, but it revealed the bitterness simmering even among the siblings who benefited most from the system.
So Mary Trump wraps all this up by connecting the family pathology directly to Donald Trump's actions on a larger stage.
Yes. She argues his entire way of operating, honed by that institutionalized upbringing, rewarded by Fred Sr., made him uniquely unsuited to handle real crises, like the pandemic. His go-to moves: lying, spinning, and obfuscating, and weaponizing cruelty itself as a tool, a distraction from failure.
The cruelty isn't a bug, it's a feature.
It's the core operating principle, learned over a lifetime.
Okay, let's try to summarize this. We've covered a lot. The core takeaways seem to be this carefully manufactured self-made myth, the profound impact of being institutionalized and shielded from consequence, and the absolute tragedy of Freddy as the living embodiment of the family's destructive dynamics.
Absolutely. And the central argument running through Too Much and Never Enough is that Donald Trump's bizarre success in constantly failing upward, being rescued time and again, meant he never had to change, never had to grow. His entire life, from the family dynamics to his public career, shows this relentless pattern: emotional emptiness, purely transactional relationships, and this bottomless, desperate need for validation that nothing can ever truly fill.
And the collateral damage. Fred Sr.'s actions destroyed Freddy, but Mary Trump takes it further, suggesting that on a national scale, people embraced a leader who turned the country into a larger version of that same malignantly dysfunctional family.
Which leaves us with a really challenging thought for you, the listener. Mary Trump paints a picture of this emotional black hole of need, constantly demanding public attention and affirmation. So the question becomes, when a society continually rewards aberrant behavior, the lying, the cruelty, the gaslighting with attention, does society itself become the enabling institution?
Does our collective focus, our inability to look away from the spectacle, just keep feeding that insatiable need? And what are the consequences for all of us when the transactional cruelty and emotional void of one deeply damaged family become normalized in our public life and discourse?
Something heavy to think about.